Welcome to Thursday.
Why does it still feel like Monday?
Because time has no meaning anymore. Time, what's that?
Yeah, calendars.
Trying to figure out the passage of moments. Hi, good morning. Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? I'm Rebecca. Oh, I jumped. Welcome to the Sun Dragon Sideshow.
I'm Liz.
No,
The Adventures of Liz and Rebecca. Told you it felt like a Monday.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I own Sun Dragon Art Fiber in Brevard, North Carolina.
I'm the minion. I'm Liz. At Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in Brevard, North
And
Carolina.
anyone who watches this regularly knows we usually say, "Hey, Sun Dragon Sideshow, yay!" And then introduce her. I jumped the shark.
It's Shark Week on Discovery Channel, so that works.
What do you do? Someone with injuries outside. It's fine.
Not
Anyway.
like bleeding and bloody, but like
No.
had been fixed.
No.
And,
Wrapped up. Yeah, it caught my attention. He usually rides a bike, so I'm wondering if he fell off his bike, that would suck. Can you hear that? The
Yeah.
Bracken Mountain Breakfast Club is all gabbing about it now. Anyway, okay. Squirrel.
Not that ever happens.
Yeah, it's 9:25 and I just got in here like 10 minutes ago. I'm running late, but you might have seen my morning meditation, which was much more zen. I'm starting to do little 1-minute clips on Instagram and Facebook of my knitting in the morning, which, between Tuesday and Friday might be the only knitting I do all day. So why not share it with y'all? So that was my morning of, and then I had to edit and figure out what part of it I wanted to do and put it up and put the things that make it look cool and write stuff, and I got late. Long story long. I got distracted, Liz. I was like, oh, the yarn doesn't even show up down there.
Just barely.
Hints of yarn. Oh, we talked about it yesterday. Anyway, she was late too, but I'm the one who has to set up the camera and everything.
She has
I have this stuff that I lug back and forth like every day. So, no, the Bracken Mountain Breakfast Club is bigger today. It was distracting. So it's hard to focus. We turned the music on. I don't even know if any of that's going to get caught on the microphone, but that's okay. I'll stop worrying about things that are beyond my control because we're in the middle of it. See that look? She knows I'm not going to stop worrying about it.
She might stop talking about it, but she's not going to stop worrying about it.
At least then you don't hear my interior monologue as much.
She's an internal or an external thinker too, so
Yes. Anyway, so happy Thursday, everybody. Thank you for spending some time with us. I may or may not have started a new project last night. Not a thing. Anyway.
Did you do what I suggested and moved one project off a set of needles for briefly? I see that. Ooh.
This part here, the ribbing needed an 8, and the 8 is in my night shift. So the night shift got to hang out on some size like 2 needles for a little bit while I did the ribbing, and then it went back.
It showed the 2s what they were supposed to do. See how big the loops are? Yeah, grow up.
She got some size issues. I'm sorry. It's,
Needles.
No, I started this. I'll talk about it later if there's time. I'm realizing with the dark purple, which is not as dark as it looks on camera. It might be, I was going to use it to show off something because it's Becky and Lizzy Day. And we'll see if it shows up. It's okay. We use the tools we have.
And when all of your needles are in other projects, or all of the needles need.
Yeah, she's referring to this.
Yeah.
You improvise.
Yeah.
I'll talk more about this on Tuesday if we run out of time, because I'm wasting time right now. Yeah. It's on 10s right now, by the way. Okay. Where do you want to start? We are starting our segment called Dear Becky and Lizzy. It's like Dear Abby, but for knitting and crocheting. And ask any questions. It doesn't matter how smart or dumb you think they are. If they are out of our grasp, if there's something that's above our pay grade, we will let you know.
We'll go, oh my.
We'll go, well, I think I would do this. I don't know. I had someone ask me yesterday online. I made my first set of mask extenders. They're already gone. I already mailed them to my mom. They're little strips with buttons on. So you put them here, and you can hook your elastic of your mask to it so it doesn't tug at your ears. And I had someone ask, well, what's the best size buttons for those? Those were the first ones I ever made. So I don't know. I did not have an answer. And I was honest with her. I said, I'm not sure. I think the ones I used were about an inch wide. And once my mom tests them,
we'll know.
Then we'll know. So, you know.
And I mean, it's a personal preference thing too. So like you could make mask extenders for 50 people and each one of those 50 people would be like,
it'd be like,
I like these buttons instead of the, you know, so.
It'd be like, I found 3 sizes of these buttons. It'd be like Goldilocks, you know, too small, too big, just right. Or someone might say, no, the big is just right.
Yeah.
Or the small.
Yeah.
You know, the big is too big, you know. And so, I mean, I think that we're going to have some of that with our Dear Becky and Lizzy as well. Because one of the things I've noticed on Facebook groups is you'll get a lot of opinions, which is wonderful. But sometimes there'll be competing opinions where they'll say their answer is the only right one.
And we've had people in the shop like that where somebody will ask a question and somebody else will be like,
an answer.
This is the only way to make sure you don't get holes in short rows in your socks. And it's like, actually, that way works for you.
Yes, that's a good point.
Like,
in my experience, I don't know if I can totally avoid holes in my socks where the joint of the heel happens and things. I mean, so we're going to be sharing our experiences and our reflections on your questions, which give you an angle. When I teach knitting and crocheting, one of my big things is, okay, there's a way that is going to help this work better. And there's the way I do it, which is how I communicate it. But in the end, you are going to find your own way to do it, that way that works for you. There are only a few things when I'm teaching knitting, crocheting, I'm super adamant about, and usually it's the way that you wrap the yarn. But even that will change depending on where you are geographically, things like that. So, you know.
It took me 2 years to settle into how I hold my yarn for crochet.
And I teach a totally different way to hold yarn when I teach crochet.
And I learned her way. Like,
but she doesn't use it.
I don't use it.
She learned it.
But that's.
And when I show it, it's a weird, like, flippy thing that I learned from a video, CD-ROM. Back in the good old days, you put a disc into your computer. And I'll show it to people and teach them how to do it. It's in my tips and tricks videos. But then I'll say, you know, in the end, if that doesn't work for you, you will find your own way to hold tension in your yarn. It's all good. So why don't we start kind of in the order we got them?
Okay.
Do you want to take one? This is so exciting. We have what? Okay, I'll take this one, and then we have this one that came more recently. Okay, what you got?
What's I got? I have.
Apologies in advance if we misread things you wrote, because it's not that it's not your handwriting's illegible. It's our readability of things.
It's been a long time since we've read cursive.
I can read cursive.
I can read cursive too, but everybody's cursive is just a little bit different.
So apologies in advance. It'd be humorous for us. So, you know, we'll sound funny. Go ahead.
Dear Becky and Lizzy, I get bored doing the same stitches over and over on projects. What can I do to make the repetition more fun? Slogging on my slider.
See, I love the fun, like, sign off. So yeah. So boring stitches. I think we have all come across that, right? And I was brainstorming on this when we first got it. And we may have different answers. We may have similar ones. That's a tough one because everyone's going to attach that in a different attack that in a different way. For some people, repetitive stitches is soothing, and that's exactly what they want. Like when you're going between things here, it can be.
I think that boring stitches are cool. Like for you go back and forth between complicated and boring, and so it gives your mind a break.
Mm-hmm. Which so my interpretation of what Liz is bringing up, which we have discussed, is having two projects going at the same time, where one way to alleviate boredom is move between different projects, so that when you do get bored with this is over and over and I'm losing the will to live, we like to say
sleeves.
Switch to something else that might be a little more complicated, might engage your brain a little more. I'm a big fan of if you are going to limit your number of projects, have them be different styles of projects, not the same. Like you're making 10 hats that are all the same for Christmas.
10 happy ones.
But right? Have one that is a little mind numbing and one that is a little more making your brain perk up. So when your brain is like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die because this is too complicated, you can go back to the mind numbing. And when you're like, oh my gosh, I'm bored out of my mind, go back to the more complicated one. So that's one option. Another option is not necessarily turning into a game, but turning it into something that is not as boring. So I reach back to, like, when I talk about meditation, I'm doing these meditations in the morning of just a little bit of knitting with not much noise, that kind of thing. It's almost like, if you like meditation at all, Zen meditation, the idea of Zen meditation when you do it is it's not about finishing. It's about the process. It's getting immersed. It's mindful meditation. It's getting immersed in the process. So for some people, one of the ways that you can do Zen meditation, Zazen, is just kind of sitting and breathing. And one of the ways to help your mind focus, because the monkey mind wants to go all kinds of crazy, is to count. Count to 10, count your breaths to 10, and start over. And if you accidentally get to 15 and you don't beat yourself up because you forgot to start over at 10. You just say, oh, look, I'm at 15. Let's start over at 1. So it could be if you're doing stockinette, which is just knitting or purling, or if you're doing a seed stitch and it's very repetitive, you might want to try counting and pick a number to start over your count, something to kind of engage you in the process where you're just focusing on the stitches and bringing you into the stitches rather than, oh my gosh, how many more stitches do I have to do? I would not recommend calculating how many stitches you have to do before you're done, because that can be losing the will to live as well. So that would work for some people. For other people, that's not a good focus for them.
Well, I when we read this the first time, I was like, well, if it's gotten to the point where you can do them without almost thinking about it, turn on the subtitles on a TV show, watch the subtitles and knit. Like, because
or listen to something.
Or listen to it.
That was going to be my next thing.
Listen to it. Mm-hmm. Start walking around if your project is small enough.
Add something else to it.
Add something else to it. Like
she mall walks and knits. It's insane.
If my projects are small and my stitch pattern is something that I can easily remember while I'm walking, I can take it and walk. It means looking up for 30 seconds, looking down for 30 seconds, looking up for 30 seconds, looking down.
And that boggles my mind. But
it's doable. It just takes some time. So,
or like if you're not usually one who watches TV while you knit, but it's a boring stitch. It's like a stitch that you can do without paying too much attention to it, and it's boring you. Get something else stimulating in your sphere, an Audible book, a TV show, something like that. But that's not going to work if you have a complicated project. Like this specific question was addressing things that are boring them. Losing your knitting mojo could be putting in time out for a little bit and coming back to it. But again, that's not what the question is asking. But that's, there's lots of different options. So I find making it more interesting in some way. Maybe putting a reward at the end of it, you know, for someone who's like, yeah, that whole like being mindful about it, that's going to bore me too. Maybe, you know, if I get through so much more of this,
I can go to a fun project.
I can go to a fun project, or yeah, or I can, or it's dessert time, you know, things like that. So,
oh, that's man, if I finish this row,
I can have ice cream. So make it a challenge. Do something to make it more fun. There's ways to invent that. So, so thank you, slogging on my slider, for the question. I think it's fantastic. All right. Next one. Dear Becky and Lizzy, I love to knit and crochet, and the yarn in your store is the best. My problem is my husband thinks I should finish one project before I buy more yarn. Said no knitter ever. How on earth do I explain this in there's never too much yarn or too many projects? How do I explain that to him or to anyone who's going to posit a question like that? Think it might be that Mars versus Venus thing. I remember reading this last week. I just forgot. Do you think it might be a Mars versus Venus thing? Puzzled in your paradise. Oh, in yarn paradise. I'm sorry. I thought I was going to be better at reading the cursive than Liz, and I'm not. Puzzled in yarn paradise. I love that. So
I would recommend phrasing it this way, like, because winter is coming. I mean, it's August. We have hurricane season to get through. We have, you know, all these nifty. It's if you get stuck in your house,
you can need yarn.
You're going to have something to keep you occupied.
Building up a stash is a good thing.
Build it, you know, even if you only have like 2 or 3 projects ahead, it'll give you something to do, because, like, you know, the earthquake, we've had a crazy year.
We've had years where the hurricane's coming through. Get your yarn now. You don't know when you can get out next.
Yeah.
You know.
Snow,
so,
you know.
Well, okay, and this is the logical attack or approach to someone who says, dude, why don't you finish one project before you get another? You can try logic. My thing is we've seen with current circumstances, when people are very polarized on so many issues, sometimes logic doesn't work. Nope. Because if they have decided what they have decided, no amount of trying to convince them, be it real logic or your logic, which sometimes aren't the same, is going to convince someone who uses a different logic system. Let me just, you know, that is like bigger life lesson than yarn. So do your best to explain to them. What was it? There was a couple that came in.
Yeah, we had a couple come in, and she
they
said,
were great, by the way. Whole family was great.
She said, yeah, he doesn't want me buying a whole lot of yarn, but he's about to go down to the range and spend money on ammo and shoot weapons. And I was like, well, yarn is an apocalypse thing. Like, if you're stockpiling something to protect you or whatever, yarn works with that, because in an apocalyptic world, you can make sweaters and trade them for things.
Trade. Yes, you can barter.
You can, like, yeah, you know, and it's a joke, but it's also kind of, you know,
it worked.
It worked. He was like, buy yarn.
It's like, okay, yeah.
And it's
like he would have the ammo and things like that if there was apocalyptic type situation and he had to go hunt for food, and she would have a way of keeping them all warm or bartering for products.
I joke all the time with my husband, who's like, you have enough yarn. I'm like, if times get tight and we need a turkey or a deer, we don't have a gun, but our neighbors do, and I can knit them something to shoot something in their yard so that we can eat. And he went, well, fine.
Yeah.
And, you know, so.
And I mean, this raises so many philosophical issues of progress versus process knitters, people who only do one project at a time versus people like both these questions kind of bounce off each other, because multiple projects mean you keep your interest and you actually get things done, versus someone who's really focused on one project. That might work, but you can still stock up yarn for future projects. I know several people, including Shia, who does that.
Yeah, so, even if I was going to do one project at a time, I would want at least one extra project ahead, just so that if anything happened, I mean, we could get sick and the yarn shop could be closed for a week or whatever. And
perish the thought.
Yeah, like,
but
don't want it to happen. But this weekend, I had plans for a project, and we don't open the shop till Tuesday, so I had to wait, and it was hard to
be. Anyway, the other philosophical thing I'd bring up here is Puzzled in Yarn Paradise brings up, trying to explain this to my husband, is this a Mars versus Venus thing? Is this a guy-girl thing? You know, male, female? Is it just that I would try to distance from it being male versus female, because we, like, stereotypically, currently crafting kind of falls along gender lines. Wasn't always the case. It was more like the men who did either both crafts or one craft, or, you know, like Liz could tell you the entire history. I don't think we have time though, because we only have about 15 minutes left today. But it's cool. Yeah. Anyway, and we know plenty of guys who knit, and one of our most prolific knowing different types of knitting techniques is Bill, who I taught to knit, and then he went off and did his own research, and he found Portuguese knitting. He, you know, he
started with English, went to continental, and now he does Portuguese. It's crazy.
I think it's different modes of thinking. Like, we have a lot of male crocheters and knitters and things, so it's not necessarily that guys are like, well, what is up with that? I don't get it, you know. But stereotypically, and stereotypes come from somewhere usually, it has fallen along gender lines. But I think it's more modes of thinking, because there are women who are just like, I'm never going to craft. I'm not going to knit or crochet. It makes no sense to me.
And if I do craft or hobby, it's one project at a time. I think it's
yeah, but they still might stockpile yarn in that case. I mean, the point I was making.
There's those that stockpile and those that don't. Yes.
No.
Yes,
that within the crafting community. I'm talking about people who don't get the crafting community, because I think that's what her husband is like too. What? Like, finish. Don't spend so much money is sometimes what it boils down to. I think it's finding a common point to relate to someone, because like you were just saying, one guy, he's like, he goes target practice shooting all the time. We have a knitter whose husband works on motorcycles, and she's like, you just dropped all this money on your motorcycle stuff, and I'm going to drop it over here. We had that conversation with your friend who likes to go to the card and comic book store, and you're like, well, you're going with me to the fabric store, right? Find something to relate with them on that's not the craft they don't understand. But everybody probably has something that they find near and dear to their hearts that they're willing to spend the money or invest the time and energy into. And it's finding that point of commonality to say, hey, it's like when you're making videos and you're off in your room editing all the time. You know, this is my version of that. And I'm going to put the time and energy into it because it's something I really care about. And so, especially if this question was focused on monetary issues, which I get, running a yarn shop, it's not all cheap yarn, but it's nice. It's maybe taking the economics out of it, if possible. Because sometimes saying, well, you spend money on this, so I spend money on that, doesn't further the conversation. It proves your point, but it doesn't further the conversation. It's finding points of connection of, let me help you understand why I do it. And sometimes that takes getting to know them a little better too. And if you already know them, then you can say, hey, it's like this. And they'll go, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. So that's my wrapping up point. But within it though, this raises the whole issues like Liz was bringing up of one project versus multiple. Like there's it's like an onion. There's layers in this. Okay. I can wax philosophical on so many things. It's kind of ridiculous. So this one I want to not revealing because these are supposed to be anonymous. This one is so cute because it's not a real envelope. And when you open it, it says, before we get to the letter, it's someone is explaining there were no envelopes at my house. Envelopes, however you want to say it, depending on where in the country you are.
Made one.
This person made one. It's awesome. I love it. So don't let the lack of envelopes in your house keep you from writing us a letter, because then you can have your question answered. So okay. And this is switching gears. The first two, I think, were somewhat related to each other. And I just looked at the clock. Okay. Dear Becky and Lizzy, I recently started watching your YouTube channel because I was looking for help before I start my first Papillon shawl. Yay, Papillons! We love them. Yeah, I have one here. The one I'm never gonna finish, but whatever. It's my third. Okay. I have always heard other people rave about how much easier German short rows are. I love German short rows. We'll get to that in a second. So I was thinking of switching out the wrap and turn short rows for German short rows. As folks that have a lot of experience with this pattern, which at this point I think we do. What was funny is when we started this podcast,
It was our first.
we were on our first Papillons. So, and now we're experienced. As folks that have a lot of experience with this pattern, do you think this is a good idea? If so, then do you have any tips for how to go about that? If you would not recommend that, why? Thank you for all the hours of entertainment I know is coming my way as I catch up on your past episodes. Love, secretly loving social distancing. There are times I kind of like it too. I don't like the whole virus and the scariness and but I'm a extroverted introvert, I think, or however that works, believe it or not. Sometimes I like time to myself. So secretly loving social distancing. There's no easy answer on this, as you may have imagined.
We've talked about this quite a bit.
Yeah. With ourselves?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and I, because before I started, I was like, do I need to learn German short rows? and
guess what? I've made videos. But
you've made videos.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think we found that because it's garter,
yeah,
you can't tell.
The short answer is you can do either one. And to backtrack, to unpeel what Liz just said about garter, is there's what in the US is more called the classic wrap and turn for a short row, which I should back up even a little further. Although you can watch my tips and tricks videos. I have one on wraps and turns for the Papillon, and I have one on German short rows. So I'm not going to show it here because we're too far away from the camera, but go look those up. A wrap and turn, both of them, I'm getting ahead of myself again. Both of them are done with the idea that if you want to do an incomplete row, a short row, which can help with shoulder shaping. I'm doing that on this guy here. It helps make the bubbles because you're going back and forth and not across the whole row. You need to do something. You can't just turn around and go back the other way because you'll have, I mean, if you think about the edge of your work, you come and you go up and you go back. You have an edge, you have a hole. And short rows, whatever type, the wrap and turn or the German short row, it's pulling at the stitch next to it. It's instead of having a hard edge like this, I put in my videos, you're having more of a triangle to try to hide the hole, to make it look a little better. Regular wraps and turns, where you slip a stitch, you wrap the yarn around it, you slip it back. In stockinette, where you've got all your V's on one side and all your bumps on the other, you have to pick that wrap back up. You have to find it and pick it back up and knit it with the slip stitch to hide the hole. Now what Liz was addressing is in garter, where you've got bumps all over the place. Bumps on this side, bumps on that side, you know. lots and lots and lots of bumps, right? Look at all the bumps. Your wrap around your slip stitch looks like another bump.
It blends.
It blends. So you don't have to pick it up and knit it. If on stockinette like this, if you didn't find the stitch and pick it up and knit it, you would have a slash across one of your V's. German short rows are slipping a knitted or purled stitch and yanking it up over, it creates a little crisscross. And then you have to knit or purl through that. Sometimes it's called a double stitch once you do that. And you don't have to find a wrap that's hunkering under your needle and pick it up and do it the right way. For me, German short rows are my short row of choice when I am knitting stockinette, when I'm doing something like this, which from back here looks like you can't see any stitches. This had short row shaping in it. See to make the back higher than the front, like that's thinner right there. And it gives a really seamless look when you do it right on stockinette. And I'm going to try to find, like, right up in here, can't even hold it close enough. There's some German short rows in there. You can see them a little if you look, but it's pretty seamless and you don't see the holes. Now, so when it's stockinette, I use German short rows. However, and so I like to teach people how to do German short rows, how to turn a wrap and turn into a German short row. That is on my tips and tricks. However, all of my papillons that I've made, this is my third one, I do a classic wrap and turn because it's hidden.
And you don't have to pick the wrap.
Yeah, you can just knit straight over the wrap, in my opinion. I'll show you, like on these bubbles, there are wraps and turns in here, and it might not look completely seamless, and it might look a little pulled in weird directions, but it's all bubbly. So when I hold it back here, you don't see it. I will say, I know I'm not monopolizing a lot of the conversation, but I've taught a lot of papillon classes. And there was one class where I had, on Zoom, during the pandemic, where I was teaching 2 people how to start their papillons. And one person wanted to use wraps and turns, and one person wanted to use short rows, German short rows. I shouldn't say they're all short rows, German short rows. And so I showed them a red square and an orange square, and one of them I did with wraps and turns, and one of them I did with German short rows. And I'd never done the papillon with German short rows, so it was an adventure. I think it might have been a little tighter with German short rows, I will say. But they can sometimes be a little harder to spot when you're trying to gauge what is happening in terms of your 8s and 10s, which makes sense to a papillon knitter. So long answer long. Going back to what Liz, it's personal preference. I would say if a German short row is a new thing that you have to learn, that you haven't tackled yet, you may not, and you already know how to do wraps and turns, like the classic slip and wrap and slip back. You may not want to do it on this because you already know how to do a wrap and turn, and you don't have to pick up your wrap on the papillon.
There's a lot going on in the papillon already. I mean, I tell people, it's an easy pattern. There's a lot going on, but it's an easy pattern. You just have to follow the pattern. Like, yeah, you can't riff, you can't carolize, you've really got to follow the pattern. If one is easier than the other for you,
yes, that's a great idea.
I would do the easiest, unless you're like, I want the biggest challenge ever. So I'm going to
go big or go home. Challenge accepted.
Yeah, I'm going to do my first papillon, and I'm going to do it in wrap and turns that I've never used, just to make it challenging. But there's a lot going on. Yeah. So it's like, and ultimately you're not going to see it. Yeah. In the work, like
either way. The flip side of that is if you already know one of them, like I just said, if you already know how to do wrap and turn, like with the slipping and stuff, use it. If you know German short rows and you don't know how to do a classic wrap and turn as written in the pattern, which isn't really explained in the pattern, but it's written as like knit 25, wrap and turn. If you haven't done the slip one, you know how to do a German short row, do that one. And here's the trick. It's in the video I have, but here's the trick. If you're trying to take what is written as knit 25, wrap and turn into a German short row, is you want to knit the stitch that says wrap and turn. So I would knit 25, but then I would knit the next stitch. And then turn it around, take that last knit stitch, that's going to be your German wrap, slip it back over to the right needle. I always have to look at my hands for that, and yank it up and over the needle to create your wrap. I once saw a video that described it as instead of a wrap and turn, which is slip, wrap, slip back, and then turn your work, a German short row can be thought of as a instead of a wrap and turn, a turn and wrap. So you knit that stitch you would have wrapped, then you turn it first, and then you slip it over and pull it up. If that sounds crazy and confusing, look at my videos or talk to me in the comments, email, that kind of thing. But instead of a wrap and turn, it's a turn and wrap. So yeah, it's personal preference. I was actually surprised at how nice the German short row bubble came out. I'm just so used to being like knit 8 and forward, slip, back, slip, forward, which again, if you watch my videos, makes sense, that I do the wrap and turns because I'm just used to it. But I would say in 95% of everything else that has short rows like this, I do a German short row.
I haven't played with short rows near as much as, lots on this.
She's expert at these.
I did the ranunculus knit with short rows, and she walked me through German short rows, and okay, do German. Rebecca, am I doing this right? Yes, you're doing that right. If I have a question about how to do short rows pre-pandemic, there would be several people sitting at the table, and I'm like, so do I do German short rows for this, or do I do wrap and turns? And one person at the table would be like, wrap and turns, and the other person, my boss, would be like, German short rows, of course. And I'd be like,
garter, I will do wraps and turns. Stockinette, I will do German short rows. Especially, and sometimes it just depends on what the pattern's written for, and if I want to really have to think hard about switching it from one to the other. So we have people starting to look at our shop, and it's just about 10 o'clock. So we have to be on call for our Wednesday. It's Thursday Monday. For our Thursday outside people. So, hey, we spent a lot of time on this. I started a new project. Let's see, this is so you can see how far I got. I'm making a sweater. That's not any of the sweaters I've talked about a million times.
I'm done with this row.
You will get to see how far I get. Believe it or not, that's dark purple. It's not black. It just looks like that on the screen. We'll get to see what happens this weekend. So we have to go. If you enjoyed this, if you're like, hey, I could write a letter, I have an interesting question. There are weeks we may not spend this much time on your questions, depending on how many questions we have. But I think this was fun. I hope you had a good time just philosophizing with us. And if you have thoughts on any of the things we talked about, we'd love to see it in the comments or contact us. But in the comments, we might get a good debate going, but then we might devolve into a knit and chat type Facebook thing where there's arguments. Let's all be nice. This is a judgment-free zone.
Personal preference is a thing.
Personal preference. It's all about that. So we love you and we miss you. If you want to write a Dear Becky and Lizzy letter, both with Y's at the end, Y, like Dear Abby, Y. Sun Dragon Art and Fiber, 35 South Broad Street, Brevard, North Carolina, 28712.
And if you either run out of time or want your question answered on Thursday and it's Tuesday or Wednesday night, you can email me, Liz at
sundragonartandfiber.com. Our business name spelled that. That sounded like Sun and Dragon and Art and Fiber and lots of bands. Anyway, that's life around here. So be safe. Please subscribe if you haven't. Look for progress from us on Tuesday. Join us for knit night tomorrow night. The details will be in this description. And craft on.
Stay tuned for Adventures of Liz and Rebecca.
Tuesday. Bye.